welcome back. It's been a while since I put a video together on this, but I got a lot done on this project. The engine, I took it apart. I basically, on the one side, I pulled the piston out of it. I checked the ring gap and I checked the bore and all that, and it all spec'd out the way it should. So I put that back together, installed new head gaskets on both sides, set the valves on both sides, and I got compression out of both sides like I needed to. So as far as I'm concerned, the engine is good. I have run it on the bench a little bit, so it does run. So I went ahead and I ordered the stub shaft kit for it, and I've replaced some odds and ends around the engine, things that were missing when I got it, like the voltage regulator, things that maybe didn't need to be done, like this rocker cover, the old rocker cover for this engine. This engine had a vacuum fuel pump on it, so the old rocker cover has a nipple on it for that fuel pump. I was going to put a cap on that, but I didn't want it to leak someday. So for like 25 bucks, I just got a different rocker cover. I'll put this one up on eBay for a few bucks, get my money back out of it a little bit. But anyways, at this point, the engine, other than coming up with some sort of exhaust system, is pretty much back together. I do still have to cut the exhaust apart, and I'm going to end up making a custom exhaust to fit the application, because they don't really offer anything that works the way I want it to, and that isn't ridiculously expensive. So that pretty much wraps up the engine portion of it. I did pull the carburetor apart and do some cleaning. I don't know if that's going to be enough to make it work. If it doesn't, a whole bunch of this crap's got to come back apart because the bolts come up from the bottom. But if it doesn't, I'll probably end up buying a $30 Chinese one off of eBay, because the carb kit is like $100. I can buy 3 cheap carbs before I spend the same amount of money on a carb kit. So that's where we're at with that. Now I'm going to show you some stuff I got going on the machine. I was looking at the wheel seals, and at least one of them was leaking, so I decided to pull them all out and replace them, and I'm glad I did, because when I pulled the axles out, I found all but one of them had damage to the lip on the seal. So this is the mess we've got going on here. This is the chain case on this machine. I don't know how well you can see this in the light, but on a typical larger machine, this center area is where the wheel motors and everything are mounted, but the wheel motors protrude through the side of a chain case that would run on either side. This is on a larger machine. And this area in here would be dry. You know, that's where your pumps are on the back of your engine. That's where all your controls and everything are at. On this machine, on this smaller frame machine, this is all wet in here. This is the reservoir for the ATF fluid that they're using as hydraulic oil. So we had to drain all the fluid out of it. The rear axle shafts are a huge pain in the butt, but a guy's got to take a nut off on the inside, and then you can pull the axle shaft out, and it's going to look like this. And then you can replace the seals and check the bearings and stuff like that. Now the bearings on this look good, so I'm not going to do anything with the bearings. I'm just going to put new seals in it. And then this big cork gasket that goes around here is no longer available. So I'm just going to put a big old glob of silicone all the way around it and slam the plate back down. Obviously, as you can see, to get to this, I had to take the foot pedals out. I had to take the ROPS off. It was pretty extensive to get into this compartment, so I don't want to have to do it again. So that's part of the reason I'm replacing all of the seals. Once the seals are all replaced, I'll come in here with my solvent sprayer and just rinse the inside of this out very good. I see a lot of debris and stuff built up in here, so we'll make sure we get all that debris washed out of here, and then we'll get it sealed back up. So that's kind of where we're at now. There's really no point in me trying to show you what's going on here, because you're not going to be able to see anything. It's difficult to get to, but you can see here is where those seals are at, right here on the outside. So that actually keeps that hydraulic oil or that ATF oil from getting out past the axles. So those are the seals that I'm replacing. Of course, like everything in life, it did not go well getting to this point. I had a couple of lug bolts that rounded off on the tires that I actually had to torch off without damaging the rim or the hub, and then I had to get the old pieces out and replace them with new bolts. I had to heat the tilt cylinder pin for this side to get that pin out, and ended up wrecking that pin, so I had to replace that pin. But it hasn't been too bad, all things considered. Getting the engine mounted in the frame and getting everything lined up is probably going to be the hardest part. It does fit. I have test fit it, but there's some clearance issues with the dipstick and the oil fill and stuff like that. It's gonna work, but it's gonna be tight. All right, guys, I think we're gonna call it for this episode. One thing I wanted to point out, I believe this may have been the reason that some of those axle seals were leaking. Guys got to pay close attention to detail on some of this kind of stuff. I believe, and I don't have any way to prove it because I don't know how long this machine's been around, how many hours it actually has on it, and how many owners there's been. But I believe at some point somebody replaced these seals. And as I put the axles back in, I noticed that, if you're familiar with a V-lip seal like this, I noticed that it rolled this outer lip in a lot of places. And you could wiggle, you could pull the axle back out just a little bit, and it didn't necessarily seem to pull that lip back out. So I don't know if you guys can see this on the camera right here, but that lip is actually folded in right there. So what happened is somebody put this seal in, they put it back together, and they didn't look to see if that lip had been folded in. So what I did was I slid it on there, and I got an O-ring pick in between the lip and the axle shaft, and I ran it all the way around, and I made sure that that lip was flipped outwards. So now we shouldn't have that leaky axle problem anymore. I'm positive that that's where that issue came from. Either that or some foreign object from the outside was able to flip that lip in like that, but I find that really hard to believe. I'm thinking it almost had to have been done when it was put together. The other thing that makes me think that is this seal has a retaining compound on the outside of it. None of the other three did. So I find it hard to believe that from factory they would have only put retaining compound on one of them. So either they replaced this one and the other three were factory, or they replaced all of them and for some reason they put retaining seal on this one. But yeah, so that's back in. I cleaned out the tank there. I just have to, I'm going to let it sit overnight for the solvent and stuff to dry. And I'm going to put the plug in, fill it up with fluid, and then we'll go ahead and get the floor bolted back in and everything. And that part of it will be ready. As you can maybe see in the background here, the engine is sitting in the machine. Not even close to mounted yet, but I'm just kind of mocking some stuff up to see how things are going to fit. Like I said, it's going to be tight, but it'll definitely work. I'm going to have to probably get a shorter belt. I bought a new belt that was the same size as the old one. And in order to have the engine up high enough that the fan guard will clear on the far side, I have to probably have a shorter belt, but that ain't a big deal. Then I just have to make where you see that 2x6 there, I have to make a mounting plate that this engine will mount to. And now that I think of it, I believe there was actually one that the old engine was bolted to. So I need to dig that out and see if it will suffice for what I'm doing. But I'm going to leave you guys here. As I get more done on the engine, I will catch up with you. Thanks for watching. Please leave a like, share, subscribe, and check back for more.